All right, for section 4.3, congruent triangles, you're going to write on the top half of the flap. So up here, but not down here. So you're going to write it in that top part and not on the bottom part. And we're going to be talking about congruent triangles. Now, if you noticed, the title of the whole chapter is Triangle Congruence. Okay, so now we're going to start getting into the meat of the chapter. And what basically happens is, instead of just looking at one triangle, now we're going to be looking at two triangles and comparing them. Once you start comparing two triangles, you're going to either say, yes, those two triangles are congruent, or no, those two triangles are not congruent. And if they are congruent, you're going to be matching the two triangles up. Okay? You're going to match all three angles, and you're going to match up all three sides. Okay? Basically, triangles have 6 parts, and if all those 6 parts are congruent, then the two triangles are congruent. If one thing is amiss, then they are not congruent. Okay? One thing you need to know about triangle congruence is that order matters. Okay? So once they tell you that a triangle MNO is congruent to triangle RST, that order has to stay perfect. Why? Because not every triangle is an equilateral triangle, right? You could have a right triangle or different types of triangles, and once you turn them or flip them, this smaller angle may not match up to this larger angle. Okay, so once the order is specified, that order is definitely going to matter. Okay, so we need to draw some congruent triangles. We're going to draw 2 of them, right? That's the main thing here, is that you now have 2 triangles instead of just 1. When we just had 1, we said what kind of triangle it was. We talked about how to classify it and all that good stuff. Now we're going to take 2 triangles and we're going to see if they're congruent. Okay, so on the left we've got triangle ABC, and on the right we've got triangle DEF. Okay, on each of these 2 triangles we have a bunch of marks. Okay, these marks become very significant. Okay, and when you start making the marks is because they're going to either give you information about the triangles or they're going to tell you that they're congruent. Okay, so inside the triangle you have what are called arc marks. So see how angle A has a single arc and angle D has a single arc? That means those 2 angles are congruent to each other. And angle B has a double arc and angle E has a double arc. That means that those 2 angles have congruence to each other. Okay? That's inside the triangle. Then on the sides, you're going to see what's called tick marks. So side AB has a tick mark and side DE has a single tick mark. That means those 2 sides are congruent to each other. All right? It's good to point out with these 2 triangles that they are not facing the same direction. Okay? Notice that from triangle ABC to triangle DEF, it is flipped and turned. Okay? So sometimes if you're needing to match up the sides or the angles correctly, sometimes people redraw it, or you can just go slowly and carefully. But after you've done a couple, you'll be able to figure out what matches up with what. Okay? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to list the corresponding congruent sides of these 2 triangles. And the best way to do it is just to go in order. So on the sides, we have a single tick here and a single tick here. So we're going to say that those 2 sides are congruent. We're just going to write the congruent statement that looks like this. AB is congruent to DE. Right? Can you go out of order? Sure, but you might lose track of things, okay? So as much as you can, go in order, and if it's not numeric, obviously go in alphabetical order, okay? The second ticks are on side BC and side EF. So the second congruent statement is that side BC is congruent to side EF. Okay. And that leaves the third tick sides. So that one should be the easy one because it's the one that's left over. That would be side AC is congruent to side DF. So we have 3 pairs of corresponding congruent sides, okay? So inside the triangle, we also have angles. That's going to be our corresponding congruent angles. And again, just like with the sides, we're going to go in order. So start with the single arcs. And when you're inside of a triangle, as long as there isn't more than one triangle drawn inside, you can just go with one letter angles. So angle A is congruent to angle D. Then look for the double arcs. The double arcs are angle B and angle E. So angle B is congruent to angle E, which makes the third one. Angle C is congruent to angle F.